it's so incredible to see, as this is liberation for everybody right now we're experiencing. And when you were mentioning about the tree of good and evil, I had a version how I see it as that it is something that exists inside every single person. And we all start off in the Garden of Eden when we are young children, and we are very connected to Source. We know who we are and what we came here to do, and we're able to see other realms, and we tell our parents, hey, look, I see fairies, and I talk to God, and they're like, this is wonderful, but this is your imagination, and
right, and then they tell us about Santa and the Easter Bunny. Okay.
Well, no, basically what happens is, it's, to me, that's the reptilian in the garden, the snake, that says, this is the truth, actually, the tree of knowledge, right? This is the truth instead. You need to let this go, and that's not how the real world works, and so forth. And the child, in a sense, says, no, I cannot, because if I do, I will die. And of course the snake says, no, you won't die, right? So don't be silly, you'll be fine, kind of a thing. And so the child disconnects from its imaginary friends and all the things that it understands, so that it can fit into this world, right? And in a sense, it leaves that paradise. The reason why I think the snake is represented, or the parents are represented as a snake, not that they're the devil or anything like that, but just that they're coming from the very first chakra, the root chakra, which is the carnal desire and survival of the fittest, right? And they're doing what they think is best. And
right,
so,
and it's all that conditioning. And what's interesting is the only prison that there is in the mind. And that's why our minds are targeted, and that's why there's mind control. But when we stay in our heart, they can't control the heart. They can only mess with our head, which affects our relationships because our belief systems get thrown off.
Yeah.
And the thing with the reptilian, it's a lower serpentine energy. It's a lower chakra serpentine energy, different than the kundalini, which affects all chakras and opens up the natural stargate, which is what we all are, and connects us back to all these multi-dimensions. But the lower reptilian energy is very much, about the lower chakras and about sort of the lower use of sexual energy, and that's why the reptilians are all sort of wrapped up into those kind of rituals. It's to keep us sort of addicted and enslaved and trapped. But the higher energy that trumps it, that sort of does away with it, is when we get in touch with Kundalini and understand, that primal force connected to the goddess that clears all the chakras and all the programs and helps us just really reconnect. And so, their whole agenda is to keep that shut down, and that's why the goddess energy was targeted, because when we connect with that, it's about heart, and it's not about hierarchy.
Right.
And so, when I express my connection to it, it's coming from, representing a unified field. It has nothing to do with me. It's not about me. It's about all of us.
Yes.
And it's, the spark within all of us. It's that missing link that when we, awaken, it's everybody who shuts it down is a part of keeping us veiled. And so this is a very simple thing that we can get in touch with without, trying to strategize and getting all lost with how we're going to tackle this beast when it runs away at the very thing that it's trying to shut down because it's so afraid of it.
That insecurity there. But I mean, again, this is what we need to do. We're always running away from the things that scare us, and in our nightmares particularly, right? We always are fighting it rather than really understanding why it's there and what it has to teach us about ourselves, how it is a missing piece of ourselves of what we do not want to see nor admit, right? And once we start to heal it and become clear of what it is and the gift of it, then we can bring that into waking life as well and change that. I feel that we have that work to do with our nightmares, and then because if we don't deal with it in the dream realm, in the etheric, then it follows us into waking life.
Yeah, I mean, the ethereal is really where, energy comes first, and then the physical world. So when we handle the energy of everything and clear ourselves, what we project is reflective of that. And any part of ourselves that we fear. Men fear their feminine side because they feel vulnerable. They don't want to get in touch with their feelings. Women have been fearing their feminine side because they're almost intimidated by their own power and that fear of being attacked, or it's just, I find when I do readings especially, a lot of people don't want to awaken that energy because they're intimidated by it. They don't know how to hold that power. They don't feel worthy of themselves because of the level of programmings that have just really placed a judgment on the way women should be. And so if one doesn't feel that they're living up to it, they don't know how to connect with their divine essence because they forget that that's what being a woman's about. And it's also what being Mother Earth is about, and it's also what being a balanced male is about. And so, yeah, these programs and programmings have been detrimental to the self-esteem of women connecting with their power, and men, are afraid to be vulnerable and connect to their feelings because they're programmed to be macho and to be the warrior and to be all these different things. And so the reason people don't trash the programmings is because there's always some sort of reward attached to it. The male macho warrior, or the woman who gets the beauty pageant prize, or, and then there's always the one that doesn't buy into it, that feels like the outsider. And then they're in a whole other world, either feeling like isolated or just saying to themselves, I'm going to stick with this truth, and regardless of the isolation. And here we are today, still carrying it with an incredible amount of support, and where other people feel permission to really awaken that. And that's a huge shift from where we were 10 years ago. And so, I give a lot of thanks to you and the women out there, and really happy I have a voice to just, encourage that part to come back without any of the things that, affect our self-worth.
Or even just with they create such a confusion as well when people start to explore their other when they say, well, for example, a man needs to explore his divine feminine, they immediately think that it has to do with being a homosexual, and they get worried right away. And I think that it has to do with a lot of us coming into our androgyny as well. Do you feel like, you're understanding that there's a whole bunch more happening, as far as now there's hermaphrodites more than ever coming to the planet like before, and so forth. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, because we're in a balancing act, I mean, we sort of, the fact that there is, a lot of that going on, it's I wouldn't say it's to compensate, but it's to kind of give energy to a form that maybe had the antithesis of that. Because, everything's about alchemy, and so we find that we're sort of morphing into these other forms, regardless of what our physical bodies are saying and what we're programmed to think. Love is love, and attraction is attraction, and what we're drawn to is what we're drawn to, and there needs to be no judgment on it. But in order to sort of awaken to, the sacred union within ourselves and the balance of the masculine and feminine, we're going to find all different forms of expressions in order to raise that back into balance. And then when that happens, I don't think the sexual is necessarily so important, because when we think of the androgynous energy, it's so in the higher chakras, above even the crown chakra, and it has nothing to do with sex. But when we're in the 3D realm, or, from 6-dimensional energies and below, we find, that the masculine and feminine are split apart, and we're trying to unite again. And the fact that it's not gender that matters so much, it's more the energy and how it feels in our bodies. That's why it ends up being a sexual thing in this realm. But ultimately, eventually, we're just going to connect to the androgynous nature of the Godhead and feel illuminated by not having to call it God, goddess, but just understand that it's something that balances us. It maintains and holds the balance of life. It's not here to pick sides. It just maintains the balance as it's a balanced energy. And then when we feel that balance and we feel the wholeness, then we really just attract complementary partners, and gender is sort of irrelevant. And that's what we're doing now, but, there's still a little bit of work to do. But we learn from seeing these reflections. And when people get lost in the judgment, they completely miss the point, because, it's a chance to see that these stereotypes, or these roles that we've been given, any guilt or shame in not following that structure is a lie. And so we're able to really learn by being humble enough. I mean, not folks like you and me and others, but being humble enough to drop that homophobia and to not fear what it's going to do to you, because we can't control others, but we can certainly control ourselves. Getting in touch with feminine energy doesn't mean anything about our sexuality. It makes us better partners, because there's more intimacy, there's more depth, and there's more connection. So, I mean, I'm amazed at the type of attitudes, and just still some of the stuff going on. It just seems so primitive compared to just the higher consciousness that's awakening in so many, but we're all moving at different speeds.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because that creates so much confusion for people, and it's really, unnecessary when, if you look at it from a higher perspective, it becomes, so much more clear, and it doesn't, it's just constantly trying, it seems like there is this desire to pollute things that are really, like fairy tales, for example, making them ugly and twisted and demented, right? Or just all these, or even certain Christ teachings and so forth, right? There's always this element where whatever kind of way we can, they can make people fear that going into exploring that or understanding that, right? It's like a pothole that you have to, see ahead and assess it and steer yourself around it again.
Right. And that whole kind of, we're taught to fear our power and not to go into those dark places. It's kind of like the dark energies. It's like darkness is a beautiful thing. It's the womb. It's the fertile soil. It's the things that make things grow.
Mm-hmm.
And our fear of it is what has allowed these entities and these forces to hide.
Yeah.
So that when we go on those journeys, it's not like we're just going into our creativity and into our power. We have to go through all the gatekeepers that are keeping us from being able to fully reclaim it. And so just reclaiming our power, is almost something we need to take a sword and our hermit lantern of the crone and navigate our way to, get out all those entities that have been taking advantage of the fact that that is a place that has become foreign to us. And when we really decide to go into it, we don't have to fear the gatekeepers, but we can see them as our own inner resistances to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Because this whole us and them thing is getting us nowhere.
No.
Everything is connected to who we are. And the reason we experience it is an opportunity to integrate and to release the negative programming that's attached to it. Because that's just an imitation. There's nothing in creation of light, dark, or any aspect or archetype that doesn't have a positive expression. The false matrix has created that duality. And we see that with the celestial bodies. Each celestial body has a positive and negative. Each astrological sign, like an Aries, might be very independent, very much a leader, very pioneering, and very warrior-like. But it can also be, very arrogant, very dominating, and very controlling. Pisces might be very mystical and magical and spiritual, but might get very delusional and want to escape. Mm-hmm. So we're all given, we're dealing with the dichotomy of masculine and feminine and reptilians and, global elite and those that are light workers, but just in our own world, just on a level of connecting to our celestial connections, there's the same kind of thing going on. And every time we get in touch with that part of who we are, there's that strength and weakness that we're working with. We can either take the route and grow to the highest octave of that energy, or we can initiate ourselves by not understanding the highest expression and initiating ourselves through that fall. And so the fall is such a huge focus, like the fall of the feminine, the fall of Lucifer. And it's falling into certain states that are looking for that alchemical transformation. And the problem is when we get stuck, that's when that word enslavement comes in. And that stuckness is the mind control programs that that have created a world that people think is real.
I see the fall as just spirit falling in love with the physical form. I mean, life is so challenging, yet still spirit keeps coming back into the physical form. As if it loves it so much that this experience, and also wanting to bring the physical with it to by location, and so forth, to explore these other realms with it, that and then we end up getting kind of trapped in it, kind of like the movie What Dreams May Come, right? And we go into this kind of a hell or an internal hell for our love, for these pieces of ourself. And then we find out that actually that, we can make it at heaven at any time. That earth actually is a heaven, that we created it into a hell when we started to get so lost in the separation game, right? But
absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing, that all created that feeling of separation. But in a sense, anything physical is a container for spirit.
Yeah.
And so when one thinks of separation rather than the two are integrated, that's what's connected to the tree of life. It has a root system, it has a trunk, and it has branches that reach to the heavens. And so the physical world is a beautiful thing. The Gnostics say, the world and the physical world was caused by an error or a flaw or a glitch. And that's great and all, because I appreciate Gnostic philosophy, but I don't appreciate that part. Because to look at anything as a mistake is to sort of, we could look at everything we've ever experienced and the things that we regret as mistakes. And that's just a cop-out compared to the journey and the destination that can be fulfilled in the now. It takes 2 seconds to really remember who we are. And some people think that they need to do endless work, endless soul work, endless, spiritual work. And yes, that's great for maintenance, but to know who we are takes nothing. And so we're not in a state of trying to pull us out of something or being threatened and we all, just have our hands full. It's so much simpler than I think anybody can imagine, because we're dreamers, we're lucid dreamers.
Yes.
And when we shift our perspective in a dream,